Beste deelnemers aan het online fietscongres, van harte welkom op het laatste gedeelte, maar niet het minste gedeelte. We hebben een topspreker voor u. We hebben ze ontdekt in Zweden, waar ze een zeer goede presentatie gaf op de Polis-conferentie. En we hebben Marianne Weinerich bereid gevonden om hier het slotwoord te geven op dit online fietscongres. Marianne is betrokken bij de Danish Cycling Embassy. Ze is co-founder en chair, voorzitter. En ze is actief op het gebied van slimme mobiliteit, smart mobility. En ze heeft een zeer interessante paper geschreven over smart mobility en gender. And now it is my honor and my privilege to give the digital floor to Marianne Weinrich for the final presentation at the Online Cycling Congress in Flanders. Marianne, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Eddie, both for the introduction and for the invitation to join you here today. I'm very happy to join you from Copenhagen. And as you mentioned, I am market manager in Rambøll Smart Mobility, and I chair the Cycling Embassy of Denmark. And like my Belgium friend, Cameron van Cluysen, I bike in heels because it's just so much easier than walking in them. So definitely related to the topic of women and cycling that I will talk about today. Just briefly about Rambøll, for those of you that don't know the company. It's a Danish founded but international design and engineering consultancy. We are now 16,500 people in 35 countries all over the world. I'm part of the Smart Mobility division. We are about 300 people in these 8 countries where we work with walking and cycling and public transport, new mobility services, as well as different kinds of planning for all those different modes. And every year we look into a topic related to sustainability, and we partner up with different partners to investigate a question within one of these topics. And as you mentioned, last year, the report that we did was on gender and smart mobility. And we partnered up with the Rambøll Foundation, with public transport in Helsinki, in Stockholm, in Berlin, and the Swedish Trafikverket. And together, we looked into gender differences in all the different modes. We interviewed gender and mobility experts. We found data on all the different modes and looked at them gender disaggregated. We did a survey of 3,500 men and women in 7 capitals in smart mobility countries. And then we had 40 focus group interviews with women. And the results from the report and the highlights I would like to share with you today. But before we do that, I have a little poll here. And the question is the share of women cycling in a city an indicator for how safe it is to cycle there? And one answer option is yes, women are generally more averse to risk than men, or no, women just don't like to cycle, or don't know. So please submit, and then we'll get back to the poll also later. Yes, the majority says yes. We're still ticking in a little bit of answers. Yeah. I think I'll continue, but almost 70% says yes. And it is actually a fact that transport and mobility is not gender neutral. Actually, gender is one of the most robust determinants of transport choice. That has been established also by the International Transport Forum. But majority of us working in the sector may not realize that or don't address it when we are planning. So some of the highlights from the report that we dug out, I would like to share with you today. The gender differences that we see in transport and mobility are basically a reflection of and occurs because of some of the structural gender differences that we still see in society. It's related to the fact that women still do about 75% of the unpaid care work, that women, and not to the same extent than men, have full-time jobs. That means also work more part-time, that there still is a gender pay gap when it comes to the paid workforce, but also that the majority of the parental leave still is with women. And that means that in that period of time when you establish a family, some patterns are established in many families related to transportation. And what we see in the data from around the world is basically that women walk more than men and use public transport more than men. Men, on the other hand, drive more cars, and women are more often passengers in these cars. And men, to a greater extent than women, use new mobility services like car sharing or bike sharing. And when I say men and women in this presentation, I speak about what we see in the data, what the majority does. That does not mean, of course, that there are not women doing what men are doing and men doing what women are doing. It is just what we see in the data, what the majority does, that I'm referencing here. Also, we see that there is a difference in travel patterns. Men, to a greater extent than women, have a more simple A to B travel pattern, travel longer distances, but is often home to work and back commute. Women, on the other hand, to a greater extent than men, have a more complex travel patterns with shorter distances, but multiple stops. It's also called trip chaining. And that makes it sometimes more complex with the multiple stops, but also because women more often than men accompany children or other family members and have to run errands in this chain of traveling. We also see that women, to a greater extent than men, think about what time of day they're traveling and what route they will choose. And that's especially linked to traveling at night, because there is this fear of harassment that is seen basically worldwide when it comes to especially walking and using public transport at night. Specifically, when it comes to cycling, we see that women, to a greater extent than men, think about traffic safety when it comes to choosing the bicycle as their mode of transportation. And the Australian researcher, Dr. Jan Girard, has said that women are considered a so-called indicator species for bike-friendly cities, meaning that the share of women cycling in a city is an indicator for how safe it is to cycle there. Because women, according to research, are generally in life more averse to risk. And when it comes to cycling, that means that women simply won't cycle if it's not safe. We are kind of smart that way. We would like to get home safe. We would like the children of ours that we are often accompanying also, of course, to get home safe. That, of course, also is the case for men. That's not what I'm saying. And we saw in our survey, for instance, here, that reflected when we asked the 3,500 men and women which challenge or concern they had in relation to cycling. We saw weather was almost equally men and women picked as number one. 2, it was traffic safety, with a significant more higher number of women pointing to that. And then for the 3rd, it was traveling with groceries and bag, where we also see much higher numbers for women than for men. So these are some of the challenges that women face when cycling. The report has a multitude of data and research. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through it all, because I'm also going to talk a little bit more about cycling. But I'll invite you to either look into the report or check out the EIT online course that they have done together with me, investigating this topic and going through the research. And but also, I want to highlight some of the findings that was discovered in the focus group interviews with those 40 women in 7 capitals. And what it revealed was that from all those 7 capitals, from Delhi and Singapore to Copenhagen and Helsinki, the women almost had absolutely identical stories about the strategies they use and have developed when they are traveling, especially at night, walking and using public transport. They all talked about the fears they have, how they have bigger jackets, maybe put up a hoodie, pretend to be talking on the phone, or actually have a conversation with the person. They walk with their keys maybe in between the fingers, in the pockets, and generally pretends, you know, I'm not available for conversation on public transport. And without, you know, this is not something that women sit down and discuss and create these strategies. It's simply something that women do, and we don't talk about it because it's become so normalized that women have these fears. And that is definitely something that is now a topic that is being investigated, and hopefully we'll also start planning this feeling of safety, like we plan for traffic safety, into our urban spaces. But one point where there was a difference in the focus group interviews was when we talked about cycling, because in the 6 of the 7 capitals, the women said, we wish we had better cycling infrastructure so we could actually use a bicycle for our daily needs, except for Copenhagen. Because in Copenhagen, there is a complete network of safe cycling infrastructure. So here the women said, the bicycle is one of my key modes of transport in my everyday life, and I'd use it both day and night, and especially at night. I feel strong and I feel in control when I'm on the bicycle compared to walking or using public transport. Basically, they said, I can outbike anybody, so I feel strong and powerful on my bicycle. So when we have safe infrastructure for cycling when it comes to traffic safety, women feel empowered by the bicycle. It fits their travel patterns with multiple stops very well. And then it also empowers women to actually feel safe, for instance, at night. And all of these findings and knowledge that is out there in the research, we need simply to talk more about and include in our planning, because there is this unconscious bias in the transport sector, because it is a male-dominated sector. And that means that this unconscious bias means that these concerns or special needs that women have are not actually always included in transport planning and in policies. So that's also why we need to have much more data. We need to include gender segregated data when we are planning. We need to include women both in projects, but also in product development. For instance, when you talk about car sharing, one of the reasons why there are more men is that often there are no child seats available in a car sharing car. And women say, so it's not relevant because I often travel with my children. So including women on all levels, having more women in this sector, recruiting to the transport sector are some things that we should focus on in the future. And from that, I would like to talk about then how actually to get to that point, like the women in Copenhagen that are saying, I feel safe and strong and powerful. How do we normalize cycling so that it's not just for the selected few, the kind of bold and how would you say, the people that would cycle no matter basically what the conditions are. In some cities, for instance, in the UK and other places, we see that it's almost 70% younger men cycling, simply because it is dangerous. So how to normalize cycling is kind of the next part of the presentation based on Danish examples. And basically, it is about making cycling safe and easy from anywhere to everywhere, meaning that it's a network and that you always, it's intuitive, and that you always know what kind of, that you can be safe on the bicycle whenever you turn a corner. That it's not so that you turn a corner or and there's no cycling infrastructure, or that something just ends in the middle of nowhere, that we unfortunately see in some places. And also that, that this network, let me just also say, of course, we need to have bikes so that we can ride, but in some cities, not in Belgium, but in other places, it's mostly racing bikes and mountain bikes that are available in the shop. And it's not everybody that see themselves using that. So we need really to have a diversity in the bikes that are available, both with low entrance so that you can have your heels and your skirt, that you can have cargo bikes for shopping and kids, that you can have kind of your own style also presented with the bicycle, but that it also suits different purposes. And then, of course, you need to be able to ride a bicycle. And in Belgium, it's much like in Denmark, that it is something that children are taught when they're small as something to play with, and then slowly starts learning. But it's not like that everywhere. And then the network. In Denmark, we have the design standard is, unidirectional protected bike lanes. In Denmark, we have curb separation, both from the pedestrians and to the cars, creating this safe space to cycle. And here it's from Queen Louise's Bridge, the busiest street in the world, actually, for cycling, with 40,000 cyclists a day. And very wide bicycle lanes. It's also because the capacity here is really needed. But of course, there are much smaller streets, and also where the speed and the volume of cars is much lower. And there you can have traffic calming, you can have low speed, and you can give priority to the cyclist. Here it's cycling street, and I know you have them as well in Belgium, giving priority to cyclists. Cars can be there, but they are more considered guests. And also, when you have the infrastructure in place, creating a better flow for cycling is a priority that is should be kind of prioritized, simply because as a cyclist, you use your own energy to get started. So having a lot of stops is really annoying. So stopping at red light is like you get that flow. It stops and you need to use your own energy to get started again. So creating green waves for cyclists, and the technology there is really evolving. It used to be the cyclist that had to adapt to a specific speed, but we see now more and more technologies where actually it is the technology that adapts to the volume of the cyclist. For instance, in Copenhagen, it can be detected if a huge, for instance, at rush hour, a huge group of cyclists are approaching an intersection, and then the system can extend the green time so that this large group of cyclists don't have to stop and wait. We also see, for instance, City of Odense has rain sensors in some of the big intersections. They also have them in the Netherlands, and maybe also you have them in Belgium. So there are these also information systems that can also in rush hour make sure that cyclists can maybe choose a different route if it's actually kind of congested like it can be in Copenhagen. Then also we have bicycle parking. Super important because every bicycle ride ends with a parked bicycle. So you really need to take care of that, both to make sure that the cyclist can be nudged to where to park, but also to create some kind of order in public space and make sure that other groups, pedestrians or people who are impaired in some way can actually, is not interfered with bicycles all over the place. But also, of course, for the cyclist, if they're parked at longer time, that the bicycles are there when you return. And also good bicycle parking at stations, because the bicycle compared in combination with public transport is just like a match made in heaven. You can actually have a kind of a car-free life with good bicycle facilities and good public transportation, because then you're catered for both the shorter and the longer distances. And for instance, here in Copenhagen, you can bring the bicycle on the regional commuter trains for free. And it turned out to be a very good investment because they had a passenger increase for almost 10% by making it free to bring your bicycle. And another item is that, like when we invite people to our home, we welcome them, we make it nice. You can also kind of welcome cyclists into public space by providing smaller things that cater for different needs that cyclists have. It can be the public bicycle tire air pump. It could be like here a tilted garbage bin, so it's easier to get the garbage into the garbage bin. It can be the so-called footrests at intersections. If you do have to stop for red, because we do have to sometime, you can kind of just chill and rest a little bit without having to dismount completely the bicycle. Or it can be the cyclist counters. They provide data 24/7, 365, but they also show cyclists that they count, that they are important, that they are welcome in public space. We also have the bigger investments, and here there are some examples of cycling bridges from Copenhagen. Copenhagen has a lot of water, and creating these shortcuts for cyclists has been very important to actually make it fast and easy for cyclists to commute and basically move through the city. And a very conscious decision from the city of Copenhagen has been that these bridges should not just be another bridge, another piece of infrastructure that was just practical. Because cycling is kind of less expensive than car infrastructure and public transport infrastructure. But that doesn't mean that cyclists should have cheap solutions, because investing in cycling is an investment in health, and that you get a return in Danish calculations, basically €1 society gets back for every time a cyclist ride 1 kilometer on the bicycle, whereas 1 kilometer in a car is a cost for society. So invest in very good solutions that not only are practical, but also brings kind of beauty and aesthetics to the city. And these bridges, the bicycle snake, the circle bridge, the inner harbor bridge here, are examples that are now also tourist attractions in Copenhagen, in line with the Little Mermaid, for instance. And we see now in Denmark, unfortunately, that cycling is decreasing. We have also struggled with an uptake of cars. Cars are getting less expensive, even in Denmark, with high taxation. People are getting richer, buy more cars, and when you have bought your car, you also use your car. So we see this decrease. We still need continuously to make sure that cycling and the bicycle is top of mind as a mode of transport for people. Like Coca-Cola, we all know the brand, we know what Coca-Cola is, but that doesn't mean they stop telling us and making us think about Coca-Cola all the time. And we need to support the infrastructure with role models and campaigns, and making sure that the bicycle is also portrayed as that urban and modern mode of transport that it actually is. And we also need to make sure that we can ride our bicycles all our lives. Here is an initiative in Copenhagen called Cycling Without Age, that is about volunteers making sure that elderly can cycle in the nursing homes and can actually get that wind in their hair that we all really enjoy throughout our lives. And if we have all of this, then basically we can have the father with the children cycling to school. We can have the pregnant woman cycling. We can have the businessman in his suit. And we can also, maybe like here in Copenhagen, have the last ride in our lives in a cycling hearse. And that for me is, life cycling. That is a city worth living in. And that was it for me. Thank you very much. And I welcome, of course, questions. And then the idea was, I think, to do the poll one more time and see if I have convinced some of the few that wasn't on the yay sayers. So I don't, yes, you're launching the poll. But thank you. That was it from me. I see. I did manage to convince some people there. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. My colleague Ine was absolutely right about you. You are a wonderful keynote speaker, and we're very happy to have you here at the online congress. I hope to see you in real life soon. Yes. There was one question in the poll. No, not in the poll. One question. Is there abuse of the cycle bridges or exclusive cycle roads by cars? And if so, how does Copenhagen cope with that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think that the question is about cars on the cycle bridges.
Yeah, no, the cycle bridges are bicycle and walking only. There are also bridges for cars and where bicycles also can go, but these are made specifically for walking and cycling and creates these shortcuts that makes it, the journey is longer than by car, than by bicycle. And so these are specifically for cyclists and in most of the cases also walking.
Yes. Very well. I see that there are no other questions. So the only thing that I can add is to thank you again, Marianne. It was not only a marvelous presentation, but also very nice photos that you used. If I see photos like this, it makes me happy. Yes?
I'm glad.
Of all kind of people cycling, so that's good. And if you ask me what changed the last 10 years in Flanders about cycling, is the increasing diversity of people cycling. Yes, and that's very, very good to see. So thank you, Marianne, on my behalf, but also on behalf of the participants of this online congress. And you see, thank you, inspiring, thank you, very inspiring. They all love you, Marianne.
Thank you. Sending love back.
Okay, all the best. See you.
Thank you.
En dan is het aan mij, denk ik, om af te ronden. Ja. Dus ik heb de eer en het genoegen om het congres hier te beëindigen, af te ronden. Ik wil iedereen danken die er vandaag bij was. Ik wil ook de mensen nog eens bedanken die er dinsdag bij waren in Deinze. En ik wil jullie uiteraard bedanken voor jullie inzet voor een beter fietsbeleid. En ik hoop jullie binnenkort allemaal rechts te zien, bij voorkeur uiteraard op de fiets. Dag. Dat was een goeie, hè? Jan, I meant every word I said.
Thank you so much.
It was good. Very
Great.
good.
I'm happy that you enjoyed it, and I would be happy to come back to Belgium soon. It's been a while, of course, because of the pandemic. So I'm very looking forward to seeing of course, the transformation in Brussels, but also the other cities in Flanders. I really love Ghent. I've been there many times. Leuven, yeah, looking forward to returning.
Yeah. So on Tuesday, during the Cycling Congress, we also awarded 3 cycling municipalities. So it was a kind of a contest. And I was very happy to see the improvements that are realized on the local, I will make it easy for myself, on the local level concerning cycling. It is, we also have quite some money that can be invested in cycling. It's about 300 million euro a year. So it is quite an amount that can be spent on cycling infrastructure, policy, things like that.
Exactly. Great. Best of luck with that.
Thank you very much.
And of course, if we at Ramböll or the Cycling Embassy can in any way assist, we'll of course be happy to do so.
Yeah. There will be a Flemish delegation going to Velocity, Ljubljana.
Oh yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah, okay. So you will meet them there.
Great. I'll track them down.
Okay, do so.
That's good.
Marianne, all the best.
All the best to you too, and thank you very much also for taking good care of me, and this worked perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Hedy. Bye.
Thank you.